I'm Van Nguyen. Welcome to the program where my guest is Australian Vietnamese singer, songwriter and musician Thanh Boi. Thanh's first taste of fame came when he was cast as the lead singer of the boy band North. In 2008, he rose to national prominence by reaching the top 8th spot in the singing competition Australian Idol. Since then, his music career has gone from strength to strength. As an international songwriter, Thanh has written songs which have hit #1 on charts throughout the world. He has also worked with international acts like the Black Eyed Peas and American music producer Red One. Thanh also founded Soul Music and Performing Arts Academy in Ho Chi Minh City in 2012, which has been fostering the next generation of Vietnamese music and dance stars. He travelled to Australia recently and joined me in the studio to share his story of growing up with dual identity, pursuing a career in the music industry, and what his plans are for the future. Thanh Boi, welcome to Full Story.
Thank you, thank you.
Let's begin with talking about how you grew up in Australia.
Sure.
Your parents fled South Vietnam to a Malaysian refugee camp where they stayed there for 6 months before they arrived here in Australia. Is it true that you believe your medical records suggest that you were conceived in Melbourne on the day your parents arrived?
Yes, that's true. Exactly 9 months, 10 days. I was born in Adelaide. And my mother always laughs about it. She goes, you know, it wasn't as if they weren't trying before. But I think I count my stars, you know, to be able to, you know, to be born here in Australia. And particularly after the hardship and the war and everything like that, it's to be born here into this country, you know, it's a stroke of luck. So, you know, it's growing up in Adelaide. I remember bits and pieces of it. And parents were they work so hard, like all of us Vietnamese parents, when we come over and you know, they have nothing and they try to build a better future for the kids. And so my father was potato picking. And I remember sitting on the farm and in the mornings, and I can still smell that dew in the morning there on the farm, you know, and I see today, you know, 35 years later or so, you know, they're very comfortable now, but they deserve it. They've worked so hard to give me everything that I've got today, so yeah.
At a young age, you helped your parents with the family textiles business after school each day. Was that tough?
I think at that particular point in time, I didn't realise it was tough. It was just part of the family. That's what you did. And I remember being a one-stitch specialist. So I'd be doing the back pockets, you know, and I'd put the templates on to create the pattern. And then I'd, you know, sit there and my mother would give me 1 cent for one pocket. So after doing 100 of them, I'm like, yeah, I've got $1 now. So with that $1, you know, back in the day, you know, $1 still went a long way. So it was, you know, 5 cents for an apricot drop, you know, and sort of jelly beans were 1 cent. So I'd buy like a bag of jelly beans and eat them all and do it again, you know. So I suppose later in life, I understood that, you know, we were working like, it was like a sweatshop, you know, and in the house of, you know, 4-bedroom house, 2 of them would be used for, you know, to put sewing machines in there and to work. But Mum and Dad just taught us that this is all part of helping out, that this is, you know, the responsibility that if we could do something, we should do something, we need to do something. And, you know, given the fact that, you know, from 10 years old, literally anything I wanted to learn, Mum and Dad would let me. So tennis, taekwondo, music, classical music, piano, singing, dancing, drama, public speaking, swimming, so anything I wanted to do, they let me do it. And so that was a way of me sort of going, thanks Mum and Dad, I'll do whatever I can.
Was learning Vietnamese at a young age also something you wanted to do?
It was forced into us. No choice. Back then, I didn't quite understand because we had Mum and Dad had no no English zone. So the moment we stepped in the door, zip, no English. And you know, we get punished and all that kind of stuff if we spoke English. Now, I didn't understand why that was the case. But by gee, if I didn't have that kind of discipline at home, I would not be where I am today. Because I suppose the older I've grown, this sense of identity, who you are, who I am, is such an important thing, because that's what defines you, I think. And I can never run away from the fact that I am yellow skin, black hair. I'm Vietnamese. And the moment you lose that sense of identity, I think it's so difficult to know exactly what you want to do in the future and what you have to do now in the present, because you don't quite understand your history. And I think that's it. That's really dangerous.
So, in your opinion, do you think it's crucial to pass on the Vietnamese culture and values onto generations to come?
I think it is a responsibility. It's a responsibility to our forefathers and to the people that have given us the life that we have today. It's respect, I think. But more importantly, as we move forward in life, and as the world becomes more competitive, and yet, I think sense of identity is just so important. I suppose I've done a lot of travelling in my life. I've been around the world a few times, and whenever I step into any new situation, I think the thing that gives me a sense of uniqueness is the fact that this is who I am. I am Vietnamese. And so when people say, oh, I love pho, I'm like, yes, I know, this is how you're supposed to do it, you know, or I love this and I love this part of your culture, because we have such an incredibly rich culture, the Vietnamese. And few Vietnamese, I think, today, overseas, truly appreciate the culture that we have. And I know that there's a lot of, I suppose, negative thoughts about our country with regards to its image to the world. But I think it's the young people like us that we need to come back and to figure it out for us. And when we come back and we figure out more of who we are, then those are the things that we need to instill in the next generation, that they can never, ever forget the blood that runs through them.
You're also helping the younger generation in Vietnam find a path in the music industry.
Yeah. Vietnamese people are so talented. And I think that's something, and a lot of the top record labels and a lot of the top music and arts people are seeing in Vietnam today, this next generation coming through, as some of the most talented throughout the region. And I just find it so fortunate that I'm part of that, and I'm part of the driving forces behind that. Because, you see, in Australia, or in America, or in the developed world, music is part of our life. You know, you went to a great school, no doubt, and I went to a great school, and music was something that we all did, and it was a compulsory subject, and everyone had to learn an instrument. If you didn't learn an instrument, you're uncool and all that kind of stuff. But in Vietnam, it's different, because it's still a developing country, and the whole idea of being an artist is still somewhat, I suppose, lower class, you know what I mean? And in our Vietnamese society, it's still very much a status driven society. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to share with Vietnam that music is actually such an important part of developing a holistic child. Because Vietnamese kids are very smart, and the rate of the reading and writing percentage of Vietnam is one of the highest in the world. However, their sense of creativity, their sense of confidence, being able to stand up and speak in front of people, being able to share who they are, what they believe, that's something that cannot be compared to other parts of the world. And for music is what we want to use as a tool to be able to develop their soft skills. And I suppose that's my biggest passion, is in 50 years' time, you know, before I die, hopefully, that every kid in Vietnam can have access to music and the performing arts. Because if we can do that, like the El Sistema program in Venezuela, when in 1975, the government actually introduced music as a compulsory subject in public schools. They saw a rise in the whole society 15 years later. And I hope to see that in Vietnam. And I suppose, on the flip side, when you've got the education side, then you've got to have the industry side as well, because the talented kids need to be able to have an industry. And in Vietnam today, the industry is still somewhat underdeveloped. But there's incredible potential, and I predict in the next 5 years that we'll see some massive superstars come out of Vietnam to be shining lights in the region and to represent Asians on a world level, in the arts, because that is, it's missing. And with the whole whitewashing that we hear about today, and it's such a topic at the moment in Hollywood, in Australia, all over the world, it's time, for Asians to be recognised for their art. And I truly believe Vietnam will have some wonderful leaders in that field over the next while.
Let's talk about your career first.
Sure.
So, as a child, you played the piano and guitar.
Piano first.
Piano first.
So I was classically trained. So that was one of those, every kid has to play, piano, and I learned classically. But then I got bored, it wasn't my thing. I just didn't have the passion to sit there and play a big sonata, And I loved pop music, and I loved guys like James Brown and Michael Jackson, Elton John, Billy Joel. So I'm sitting there playing the Piano Man and playing, Michael Jackson and impersonating him, ow, and all that kind of stuff. But all that started though because my dad had a dream. And you know how Vietnamese are so superstitious sometimes. He had a dream one night and he saw music notes. And that's the reason why he put me into the Johnny Young Talent School first, down in Richmond here actually. And then after that, everything just moved forward from there. So then I started picking up guitar, but just for fun. But singing was probably the thing that I enjoyed the most. So I started doing classical singing. And singing, whoa, sort of that kind of music. But then I fell out of that too. And I started singing pop music. And loved it, loved the soul stuff, loved Stevie Wonder, bought all his records and sat there and tried to impersonate very superstitious, and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until 17 that I realised this is what I want to do. I was sitting in a karaoke bar with my mates for the first time I actually sang for my friends. And the reaction I got was like, whoa, man, this is such a cool feeling. They were like completely blown away. I was singing Boys to Men. And they said, I finished the song and they were like aghast, like silence. I'm like, what's wrong? They're like, oh my God, you're actually pretty all right. Then after that night, literally, I sat there, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I said to Mum, when I got my VC results and all that kind of stuff, Mum was really happy, I went to Melbourne High and I got, all of us did pretty well, and I got the marks to get into, whatever I wanted to do. And Mum goes, okay, finally, I've sacrificed my whole life. You're going to become a doctor. And my dad's like, no, he's going to do comm law because he's good with his words and he's got a vibe for that. And I'm like,
sit down.
Mum and Dad, I have to tell you something. I want to be a singer. I want to be an artist. I want to be a musician. And it was deathly silent. And literally, it was a tough time. I had a hard time trying to convince them. And ultimately, did I convince them? Not really. But we found a compromise. So the compromise was, my mother said, if you don't get a university degree, we will disown you. So that is the compromise.
Another 3 years?
Yeah. So I decided, the compromise, let's do Bachelor of Business IT. So I went to Swinburne, did that, did the whole, ceremony thing, put the hat on, take a cheesy photo. And then a few months later, I was on tour. And so I've never looked back since.
So was that month when you went on tour the time when you joined the music group called North?
So North actually happened during university, during uni. So it was, I remember auditioning for it. And, you know, back then, I was wearing size 36 pants, extra large, and I still have those jackets. And I said there, how the hell did I fit into that? And I realized that during the VCE year, all I did was study and ate and study and ate. And I put on literally 15 kilos that year. I ended up being 90 kilos, you know, thick glasses and crooked teeth, and I really looked like a dork, you know what I mean? But I went for the audition, I sang, and my first manager, Tim Long, he goes, whoa, okay, I want to make you the lead singer. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, I see something. And I went, whoa, okay. And so he lasered my eyes, and he, hired a personal trainer, and I lost 20 kilo, and, you know, and I'm actually very thankful for him, what he did for me. And then he gave me my first chance. We got signed to Universal Music in Asia. We did the first album called North, and the band was called North, and the first album was self-entitled, and we released our first single. It went #1 in like 3 countries. And I remember flying into Thailand straight after uni, 2 months in, and it was, I think it was April, May. So first time overseas, we fly in, and we're in the taxi, and at 5 o'clock, they turn on the radio, and we're the top song in the country, the top 5 at 5, and we're #1. And that feeling of listening to your voice, the song on radio, was so surreal that I thought, wow, I've made it. This is crazy. This is such an incredible experience. And we were on tour for literally 7 weeks, and we were treated like rock stars, you know, and I tell you, I wish I had that time again, that I would actually be able to appreciate more of what happened. Because by the 3rd or 4th week, you know, we were all tired, because we were, you know, literally in each country. We were in Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, promoting the album. So it'd be like the schedule would be crazy, you know, radio interviews in the morning, and then TV, you know, doing the morning show. You do a show at the mall, and then you have a night show, and it's like that day in, day out, day in, day out. And as the lead singer, I couldn't, you know, do what the other boys did and sort of do the whole rock star thing, you know. I'm like, guys, you guys can't do this. I'm like, well, we can, because you're the only one who needs to sing. You're the lead singer. But yeah, it was an incredible experience, and one that I would, you know, I learned so much from that, and fell in love for the first time, and you know, just all these crazy experiences at the same time, and sharing the stage with Hoobastank and Ashley Simpson and the like, and it was like, whoa, it was one of those experiences, you know.
A couple of years later, you were the first Vietnamese Australian to make it to the top 8 of the Australian Idol contest. What was that experience like?
I have to be honest with you, that was probably the most difficult experience in my life. It was definitely the most difficult, because prior to that, you know, things were really good. You know, after the band disbanded, because we released another album called Straight Up, but that went straight down. We toured again, and it got to a stage where, you know, it was over. And myself and Alf, you know, one of the other guys in the band, we started, you know, doing more songwriting and producing, and so that took us to Germany, to the States, and, you know, we started to get, you know, some really good songs from other people's albums. But I was actually really unhappy during that period. When I was at 25, I realised that the thing that I really wanted to do was to be a fully fledged solo artist. And I realised I'd never had the courage to do that. I was in the band, you have, you know, other guys to hide behind, and as a songwriter, you're hiding behind your songs, and I realised that I was running away from it. I just didn't have the courage. That's it. And I realised that, and I said, you know what? I'm not getting any younger, and Idol might not happen the next few years, so I'm just going to go and do it. So I did it, and I was, you know, to get to top 8 was like, you know, it was like 32,000 contestants that year, and I was kind of blown away that I even got into the top 100. So once I got into the top 100, like, yeah, man, I'm a winner. I've already won big time. And then I got into the top 24. I'm like, nah, this isn't happening. And I got into the top 12. And then, you know, and then people like really supportive, and they were like, oh my God, this is the first time like a real Asian, not like a part Asian or something, but a real Asian looking guy's been on TV for, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember listening to Talkback Radio, and I was a topic on Talkback Radio, and I'm like, I've made it. But it was fascinating because they were talking about why there were so few Asians being represented in the arts and in music. And I sort of started to feel the sense of responsibility that, oh, actually, yeah, if I had kids right now, this, I suppose, something that I do want to share with the Asian parents and all that kind of stuff, is that I had such a hard time from my family wanting to do the arts, because they said, you know, you're Asian, why do you think you can, what makes you think that you can actually make it when there's no one out there? And that's actually a very, very honest, true question that when I look back, you know, my parents had a point. Even today, you know, many, many years later, it's 2016, and Asian representation throughout the world is still not the way that it should be. So, you know, I got into the top 12, and then, you know, after the winner takes it all, when Marsha Hines gave me a touchdown, I was like, I had my moment. That's it. It was difficult because I realized that I wasn't vulnerable enough. I realized that I didn't truly understand what it meant to be an artist. Growing up in a Vietnamese family, my father spoke to the kids as he taught us that to show emotion is to be weak. But to be an artist, it's being true to your emotions is your greatest strength. Because if you can't be vulnerable and show people all sides of you, then you've missed the point. And so on the show, I was a bit stoic. When the judges spoke to me, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, I was more of a, you know, I just wasn't, when I got criticized, I didn't take that criticism in the way that I would take it today, for example. And when you're not vulnerable, you don't show people who you are. And when you can't show people who you are, especially as an artist, then you're not being an artist. So I learnt on TV, after getting all the comments and reading all the, you know, all that kind of stuff in the papers, blah, 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 I realised that it was the greatest thing that could have happened, was I actually learnt the definition of what it means to be an artist. But it was the most difficult experience, because I kind of lost myself on the show. Because the pressure of being in this little hub, you know, you're in Sydney, you've got the full press there, you're living with other people that you would not necessarily even get along with in you know, real life. It's a reality show, and you know, there's lots of things that they do that you choose your songs, but then, you know, the producers will sort of tell you, oh, you should do this. This person tells you, oh, you should do this. And so you're sitting there going, what the hell should I do? Everyone's got a different opinion. Everyone's telling me what I should do. And I lost myself. I lost myself. And I, you know, and I realized that it wasn't about the talent. Because I realized that in that group of people, the top 12, I knew that I wasn't less talented or less good at what I was doing. But the person wasn't right yet. I hadn't grown up yet. And I think that's the one thing that I learned, was to grow up and to be able to handle the pressure, handle criticism, and get used to public life. And I know that experience has definitely put me in good stead for today. So
let's talk about in 2012 you moving to Vietnam. Was that a hard decision as well? Why did you decide to go back?
Yeah, it was a difficult decision, because at the start of 2012 I actually wanted to go back to Australia. Yeah, that's the truth, actually. I've been to and froing, you know, Australia and Vietnam for a year and a half or so, a couple of years. And the way of working in Vietnam, in a developing country, there are certain things that need to develop, you know, and it's the full professionalism of an industry, etc., etc. And And even things, simple things that really got me upset, like things like traffic and not being able to walk on the footpath and people being late all the time and just the way that Vietnamese sometimes don't support each other. You know, I'm a true believer that one should celebrate others' successes. I'm happy for people if they're happy, you know, because it makes me happy, and if they're more successful than I am, then they inspire me to become better at what I do. But in Vietnam, sometimes the way that the Vietnamese work together, the sense of teamwork, the sense of we instead of just I, those things really got on my nerves. And so my wife, on the 1st of the 1st, 2012, I told my wife, look, I'm going home. And she sat there and she goes, you know what, you can do whatever you want, Tan. It's your life, it's your choice. I can't follow you back to Australia. She goes, so let me tell you something. You've had the opportunity to do this, 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 this. You've trained with the world's best teachers. You've had all the opportunities that people would die to have. And all I hear you do is complain that things are terrible. I'm just going to ask you one question. What are you doing about it? That was it. No one's ever spoken to me like that before. And hit it so heavy on the head. And I sat there and I was silent. My tongue felt like lead. It was like heavy like lead. And I said, you know what, darling, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I've never had the courage to stand up and to really do it. And she goes, do it. And that's when she said, let's create a new organisation. What if you had the chance to do it, what would you do? I said, look, I want to do something that's going to bring back the soul to this place. That in the music, it's about the music, it's about the soul of the music. And then the aha moment, soul. So I went home that day from the taxi and I drew the word soul, and that's become the logo, and that's become what it is today. Because I think to solve any problem, you've got to go down to the roots, and the roots is education. So you can't go back to Vietnam in a developing country and expect people to think like you. I believe that's wrong. Because we've had the opportunity, you can't compare bananas with oranges. If you gave everyone the same opportunities, then you can compare. But for a country 40 years after the war, I think we're doing pretty okay. And because I have a deep sense of understanding the importance of music and the performing arts, because ultimately music is our culture. And when you don't respect the culture, we lose everything, you know. And so that's when we opened Soul Music and Performing Arts Academy. And then you've got the other work that we do, it's the Soul Production side, which is to bring higher quality of music into Vietnam, so that the production values and the quality of the music is better, and to create a better industry. And then we've got the artist development side, because there are some incredibly talented Vietnamese talents over in Vietnam, but they don't have a venue, they don't have an institution that can develop them in the right way. So soul is this combination of getting the strong international values, but combining it with strong Vietnamese culture to create, I suppose what we want to do with the education side is to develop holistic Vietnamese children who are local citizens, think globally, but have strong local values in whatever they do. Because if we can do that, then we create leaders. And when you create leaders, especially leaders in the arts, they have a voice. And when they have a voice and they've got a little bit of humanity in them, by gee, they can change a whole generation within a generation. So that's the dream for me, and what we've been doing for the last 4 years, and that is the most important thing for me. And I suppose now I understand why the whole artist thing, I used to want to do music and become an artist because I just wanted to win a Grammy one day and to go, oh yes, I'm an artist. Well, yay, I'm famous, yay. But as you get older, you realize that's not why you do it. And I realize that the whole artist thing is part of my expression to almost, you know, because I've come into the Vietnamese industry not as a Vietnamese, but as a foreigner, as an Australian, as an international. And then the music that I've done has been a combination of both, you know, modern sounds, but singing in Vietnamese, putting a little, you know, a few words of English in there to make it sort of more hip, you know. But as I move forward now, I realize that, you know, in the industry where I am, I've sort of got to create the trends. I've got to have that courage to put things out that might not necessarily be what the market expects, but this is my own expression to inspire other Vietnamese kids to want to express themselves and not to follow the trends, and to create their own trends, their own sense of individualism. And I think if you can do those things, if you have just one Jin Kum Sung in this lifetime that we can develop over the next, you know, however many years, because, you know, soul is now the that was Jin Kum Sung's last wish, was to have a scholarship in his name, and the family sort of given it to me and soul to actually push, and that's a huge honour for us. So if we can just create one more like him, then hey, we're doing okay. I can die being a happy man knowing I've made myself happy, I've contributed to society, you know. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Do you have any advice for Vietnamese born overseas who want to enter the music industry?
I think first of all, to any Vietnamese born overseas, go back to Vietnam, find out who the hell you are, find out your roots, find out your history, find out everything you can about your culture, because that will just change your life. I truly believe that. Music industry, I think anyone who's interested in the music industry, Vietnam and Asia is the future, because it will become, you know, economically it's growing faster than any other part of the world. The developed countries are moving so slowly because they're already developed. Developing countries, I think, so much potential to grow, and particularly a young population like the Vietnamese, where 65% is under 30. There's just huge potential to do your thing, find out more about who you are, and then to use that as a launching pad to go out to the rest of the region and then the world. You know, because if you can speak Vietnamese, which I think you all should be able to speak Vietnamese. Learn more about, you know, the Vietnamese artists that have given us the language that we have today, Jin Kum Sung and Ngo Thủy Minh and all those people. Like they're important figures, like the Bob Dylans of the world, you know, for us to understand. And I think the most important thing though is passion. Only do it if you're truly passionate about the music, and not because you want to be famous or you want to be rich and all that kind of stuff. Do it because you love the music, because the industry is tough, it's hard. There is no clear path. You've got to define your own path. You've got to have a lot of courage. You've got to become very, very good at what you do to even have a chance of breaking it through. And you've got to work hard. You don't see the behind the scenes of how hard we work, because it's not like a 9-to-5 job. You are consumed by it. It takes over your life because you love it. And that's truly the only way to break through. That's what I'd say.
Thanh Boi, it's been a pleasure to have you on Full Story. Thank you for speaking to me today.
Thank you very much.